to sound like a native Spanish speaker? Learning how to use indirect objects is a great place to start. Hola everyone! In this video, I'll explain what indirect objects in Spanish are and why they are a key topic to master when you're learning Spanish. I'll also talk about what indirect object pronouns are and how to use both of these. We'll cover plenty of indirect object examples, simple formulas to follow, and the different cases in which you should use indirect objects in Spanish. Are you ready to go down the indirect objects rabbit hole? But first, I just want to remind you that we post new videos every week. If you like them and don't want to miss them, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and click that notification bell. Again, like, subscribe, bell button. That's it. Now we're ready to dive fully into the world of indirect objects and their pronouns in Spanish. Let's start from the beginning. What are indirect objects in Spanish? Well, indirect objects are words that tell you to whom or for whom something is done. In other words, we're talking about the receivers of the action done by the subject. In grammar terms, that action is known as the verb of the sentence. This is easier to understand with an example. Preparé un café para Carla. I made coffee for Carla. If you want to find the indirect object in this sentence, just ask, ¿A quién le prepararon un café? To whom or for whom the coffee was made. By answering this simple question, you'll be identifying the indirect object in this sentence. A Carla. For Carla. Got it? Great! Because now is when things get interesting. In Spanish, you can replace the indirect object with a pronoun. Let me remind you that there are 3 types of pronouns in Spanish: subject pronouns, direct object pronouns, indirect object pronouns. Can you guess which ones we're interested in today? That's right, indirect object pronouns. In Spanish, there are 5 indirect object pronouns: me, te, le, nos, les. Each indirect object pronoun corresponds to a subject pronoun. That way, we have to use me for yo or I, te for tú or you, le for él, ella, usted, or he, she, the formal version of you, nos for nosotros or nosotras, we, les for ustedes, ellos, ellas, plural formal you, and they. To better understand these pronouns, it helps to learn that they also exist in English. Take a look at the following image to see them more clearly. The Spanish me is the equivalent of the English me. Te is you. Le is a little more difficult as it means him, her, and it, but it's also used for the Spanish formal you form, usted. For plural, we have nos is the Spanish equivalent of us in English. Les is the Spanish pronoun that's used with ustedes, which is the plural Spanish formal for you, but it's also the same as them. Once again, it's easier when you look at some examples. Notice the indirect object pronouns in these examples. Maria me llamó. Maria called me. Te lo advertí. I warned you. Le dieron los regalos. They gave her the presents. Nos escribieron una carta. They wrote us a letter. Les compré un helado. I bought them an ice cream. To avoid confusion with le and les, which refer to masculine and feminine objects, you may clarify by adding the preposition a and the subject pronoun or proper name. Le compré un libro a él. I bought him a book. Le compré un libro a Miguel. I bought a book for Miguel. Things always look clearer when you can see some examples, right? Our native Spanish-speaking teachers from Guatemala provide their students with plenty of examples about lots of grammar topics, such as the indirect objects in Spanish. Sign up for a free trial class at Homeschool Spanish Academy. You don't need a credit card and no payment is required. Just click here and sign up for your free example-filled Spanish class today. Now, there are some verbs that usually accompany indirect object pronouns in Spanish. Let's learn a few of the most common ones. Comprar, to buy. Dar, to give. Decir, to say. Escribir, to write. Mostrar, to show. Pedir, to ask for. Traer, to bring. And here are some examples. Nos dieron la beca. They gave us the scholarship. ¿Te pido un café? Shall I order you a coffee? Sírveme el agua, por favor. Pour me the water, please. Notice how in the first two examples, the indirect object pronoun comes before the verb. But in the last example, it forms a single word with the verb. Indirect object pronouns may be placed immediately before or after the verb. If they come before the verb, they appear as a separate independent word, as in the first two examples. If they come after the verb, they're attached to the end of the verb, like in the last example. Let's take a closer look at the placement of indirect objects in Spanish. There are 4 possible cases. Let's see each of them. 1 conjugated verb. When you only have one verb in the sentence and it's conjugated, the indirect object pronoun will always come before the verb. For example, te hice un café. I made you a coffee. The formula for this case is indirect object pronoun plus conjugated verb. 2. Verbs in infinitive. If the sentence includes a verb in the infinitive form and this verb stands alone, the indirect object comes right after it, forming one word with it. For example, enseñarle la solución no ayuda. Showing him the solution doesn't help. The formula for this case is infinitive combined with the indirect object pronoun. However, if the infinitive in the sentence is there as a part of a verbal periphrasis and it's accompanied by another conjugated verb, then the indirect object pronoun can go either before the conjugated verb or after the infinitive. Tienes que comprarle un estuche nuevo. Le tienes que comprar un estuche nuevo. You have to buy him a new pencil case. In this case, the formula is double. Indirect object pronoun plus conjugated verb plus infinitive. Or conjugated verb plus infinitive combined with indirect object pronoun. 3. Gerunds. The same thing happens with gerunds. If the gerund stands alone in the sentence, the indirect object pronoun comes right after it. But if it's part of a verbal periphrasis, then it comes before the conjugated verb. For example, siempre está molestándome. Siempre me está molestando. He's always bothering me. And the formula is indirect object pronoun plus conjugated verb plus gerund. Or conjugated verb plus gerund combined with the indirect object pronoun. 4. Imperative. The indirect object pronouns come after the imperative in affirmative form and before the imperative in negative form. Some examples: hazme reír, make me laugh, no me digas, don't tell me. The formulas are affirmative imperative plus the indirect object pronoun and the indirect object pronoun plus negative imperative. Now, don't let this amount of information overwhelm you. When you look at it calmly, the indirect object in Spanish and its pronouns follow a pattern. Once you understand that the indirect object pronouns exist to save you repeating proper names and that they play the same role as they do in English indirect pronouns, it's quite simple. Practice the different cases and you'll master the indirect object in Spanish very soon. Did you like this grammar lesson? What other grammar topics in Spanish would you like us to cover? Leave us a comment below and we'll do our best to get into that specific subject for future videos. Also, if you have some ideas to share about the indirect object in Spanish, feel free to do it in the comment section and start a conversation with students from all over the world. Now that you've mastered the indirect objects in Spanish, I invite you to learn everything you need to know about the direct objects. Adios! I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and click that notification bell to never miss the best Spanish content on the web.